5. Let's do it. What is this, episode 6?
6 or 7, one of the two. I haven't looked. I'm all about recording. But yeah, well, this is like episode 7, episode 8, one of the two. 6, 7, or 8. Someone tell us honestly, but yeah, we're looking to be super consistent. Rick and I, when it comes to marketing and finances,
Yes,
because for many reasons, we're just talking about, we want to produce more than we consume. And when you produce more than you consume, whether you're doing a podcast or, you're trying to handle your finances, or you have a business that you own, like a local business, like me coming back from Colorado from that shop, you can have more control over your life when you're a producer more than you are a consumer. And by doing that, you have control, because a lot of people like play victim.
Yeah.
I literally made a post yesterday. I actually made a video. I'll be posting pretty soon, but you don't have to be a victim to the traumas or the adversities to your life. You can actually do something about it when you train your brain to be solution oriented. And part of being solution oriented, in this case, we want to educate people on how to have a better approach about their finances and their marketing, because we have experience of doing so. And then I was listening to some of your TikToks on the way here, and I'm curious on what your I wanted to go off of what we're talking about off camera is the recession. Recession is a big word, or I want to figure out a word we can say, the R word, about the country.
Well, we're just in decline. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Right? So there is an indicator. It's called the SOM indicator. And basically what it does is it measures when it hits a certain percentage, I think it's negative 0.5%, that triggers a recession. Okay. So it's one of the signals that economists use to understand, like, okay, we are either close or we're at an all-out recession. Okay. So that signal was officially triggered yesterday. So immediately what happened, if you looked at the stock market, was a lot of investors basically were panicking. It was like all-out sales of S&P 500 went down. It was like 2%, a little bit more than 2%. Okay. All the big stocks, the NVIDIAs, the Microsofts, that I think Apple was the only one that actually went positive, but all the major stocks went negative. So it's like what Warren Buffett said, there's blood in the street right now. People are all out panicking because we had that signal of a recession. So, yeah, and it's actually funny to post that video because a lot of people, and this is something you were talking about off camera, a lot of people felt like we've been in a recession and we just haven't been told the entire truth. And I think that's why I like doing these podcasts, is because it brings a new perspective to everything. Yeah. Like, even our political system and our finance system is very heavily marketed right now. Okay. And it's marketed, especially when we look at the recession right now, to make it seem like things are not that bad, right? Like, it's like, yes, okay, like the cost of everything's up right now. Gas is high, groceries are high, rent is high right now, but don't worry, the jobs market is good. Like,
they'll never tell us.
Housing prices are, okay. Like, those haven't crashed yet, but they're basically doing that to, like, not tell the entire truth. They're more so doing it so that there's not all-out panic, which then raises the question, are they doing what's in the best interest of
naturally me
of America?
She loves your honesty, or he or she loves your honesty.
That's why I love doing finance content, is like, I don't play sides in anything politically. Like, I want to know everything that's going on so that you guys can ultimately benefit. Like, that's my whole thing, is like, if I win, you win. And the more I understand, the better it is for everybody, right? Because being in finance, you know my backstory. You guys see the series books here. I mean, I constantly am learning stuff in finance, and the more I learn, the more I'm like, why is this stuff like not common stuff that we talk about? Because as we're having this discussion about a recession, people are still in the market right now, right? They're still buying stock right now. They don't know what to do. They're panicking. And I know I can't grab my phone right now, but we just talked about how much money is in people's retirement accounts. And it's the lowest number I've ever seen.
88,000. It's around 88,000.
If you're close to retirement, 65 and over, the average amount in somebody's 401k is $88,000. You cannot retire on that. Yeah. That's not possible.
No, not in America.
Right, exactly, especially with inflation the way it is right now.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like, at the same time, the Federal Reserve's going to sit out here and move the goalpost about what they classify as a recession. And then, as I told you in sneak preview to content that's coming out later on today, but now they're starting to manipulate the M1 numbers.
Okay.
And they use this thing called the seasonal adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing some research on seasonal adjustment right now, but essentially what it is they look at bank deposits that are going in, and they adjust the actual number based on seasons, because they feel like seasons have an impact on how much money people are actually putting into the bank. So they'll make adjustments to these numbers. So they're not looking at hard numbers. They're basically looking at, okay, we're going to use this calculation, which I looked at the calculation. I'd love to read it to you, but I'll do it I'll forecast the video.
They are sugarcoating everything. Yes,
they're basically manipulating the numbers that
Yep.
they're saying are going into banks as far as deposits are concerned, which makes it look like, oh, banks have a lot more liquidity, right? So it instills more confidence in banks, and it's like, do you understand how bad this is right now? For you to have to manipulate numbers to make the economy seem better than what it is?
I think people do, and that's the scary thing. They understand it, so I think when you say all this, my first thought is I watch a lot of doomsday, end of the world movies. Since, I don't know, it's always been something that's fascinated me when it comes to our regular instinct to survive in a really basic environment. Like remove, I want to go on vacation, I'm graduating school, I get to go, I get to do this, I get to do that, all these accessory activities outside of like being a living human being. Like I've always watched Survivor, where it's where they would have the guy on Discovery Channel and he would go out for 7 days with his own equipment, and he would live off of some land, and he had 7 days to get to a destination. He would be left with like a toothpick, maybe some cotton, and then maybe a lighter or some sort, and then he had to make the most of it. But no one's gonna tell us what we need to hear in order for us to have what we need to be successful, and that's why this is important. Because I don't know. Remember did I ever tell you about the movie about the Obamas, where the Obamas made a movie beginning of the year on Netflix called The World Left Behind, if I'm not mistaken?
I watched that. It had Ethan Hawke in it, and it had Julia Roberts in it.
Yeah. So that's an example of how they'll never typically tell us when things are going down south, whether it be an apocalypse, whether it be a downward recession. That's what I think about when you talk about them saying that what they're doing is ill-advised, and they're changing the boundary of what might be considered a recession, where they don't want people to necessarily panic. It just makes you think, what are we in for? What can we do to be on the offensive instead of the defensive, and just be scared per se? Because it's, again, going back to what we said last episode, things are fearful, and it's nothing. You don't necessarily need to don't bury it, but assess it and figure out what moves can you make for yourself. Like I wanted to talk to you, and I've been talking about getting invested into silver or gold. So because if something does happen, that's what we're going to revert back to from outside of a digital era where we can talk like this in case power shuts off, the grid goes off, all these different things. And that right there is the most extreme, of course, and it might seem so far-fetched, especially in the United States, but that's the vulnerability. That's the vulnerability to think that we can't go back to an era where you got a watch, turn me that watch, for that sheep. You know what I mean?
Well, exactly. And it's like, so do you remember? This was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. Do you remember the CrowdStrike glitch that they had? They called it a glitch. So CrowdStrike is a cloud-based server. Essentially, in all the top companies, it's 70% of the United States uses this company for their cloud-based storage. So what they essentially said happened, and you can buy it or not buy it, that's completely up to you. I'm not going to get conspiracy or anything like that. But essentially, what happened is they were installing an update on this cloud-based server, and it's usually supposed to be verified by 2 parties. The person that created the patch, and then somebody else verifies it, makes sure all the coding's right, all that stuff. Well, it didn't go through a second verification. So they uploaded this patch, and the patch was coded wrong. So what it did was it made hospitals without communication to patients' files. It made airports without communication from the airplane to air traffic control, and banks were completely shut down.
This might be I heard a little bit about this. I don't know if it was. I didn't know this. This probably happened again.
This happened like 2 weeks ago.
But here's the crazy thing, because my girlfriend, she works at the hospital. And so they had this issue months ago, where it was only for like a short period of time. It was like at night for like 3 to 5 hours for her hospital, where they were unable to process documents digitally or process insurance digitally, and that was an issue. They couldn't operate. Like, everything had to revert or attempt to be reverted to physical transaction, which I think at the time they didn't necessarily have a system in place for that. But that's terrifying.
That's what happened at banks. Is they literally, so people were coming into banks to withdraw money, but the systems that the tellers used weren't working. So, and it impacted each bank a little bit different, but people would come in, and it was a Friday of all days when people get paid, right? They come in to get money, and they can't get money. So some banks were actually turning them away. Like, that's an extreme scenario right there, right?
Chinese video that you made.
Exactly. And then the other thing is, well, luckily I know that, like, some banks, their ATMs were still working and things like that, but ATMs have limits.
Yeah.
ATMs will have $500 limits, $1,000 limits, whatever. So you're limited with how much you can take out, right?
Right.
The other thing was, and I heard this happening in other countries, but since air traffic control wasn't working, they had people on the ground, these air traffic controllers on the ground with whiteboards and writing messages on the whiteboards to the pilots about where to park the planes. Like, that is just, I mean, think about that. It's 2024 and that's what we're dealing with right now. You know what I mean? So it's like one of those things that I think we're in a society right now where, yes, everything's digital, but we also have to, like, and you said it earlier, we have to be dependent on ourselves. Like, this clearly shows you between what happened here and what's happening with these recessions and, like, these numbers being manipulated by the Fed and all this other stuff. Like, the only person you can be dependent on right now is you. That's it. You have to figure out how to navigate this stuff because you're not being told the whole truth.
Yeah.
And it's
never will. Unless you are here on MarketMoguls and you're doing your own due diligence and research on the things that we're talking about, because they're never gonna necessarily tell you straight up. And this is why that's why we have to incorporate manual things into our lives, because convenience can cripple a society. So
100%.
that's what's terrifying with all this stuff. We gotta have protocols in place. If the electricity goes out, we need to know how to get somewhere without GPS, and what would you do if digital currency went away, and how would you operate in life? Because a lot of people in America, or people that rely on the internet, wouldn't even know where to start. They would just be you might as well be a vegetable at that point. Like,
well, think about how easy the mind would be manipulated at that point, right?
Yep.
Like, all out chaos, people not knowing what to do. You don't know who to turn to, who to trust. So you're going to keep listening to the powers that be, right? The governments, your bosses, your job, whatever. Go do this, go do that. But at the same time, they don't know what's going on half the time. And they definitely don't have your best interest in mind, so now what? You know what I mean? It's like you have to think outside the box and you have to be prepared for anything. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And then going back to the internet, because just kind of bringing it full circle, because it's a mutual interest to keep the internet in the grid on, because at the same time that could happen, at least in America's standpoint, where it gives us the ability to have a message put out at scale where we can consume things instantly. Things aren't necessarily good for you, but also things in this case that are good for you, but in the sense of people that want to put out a message or an agenda, however you want to look at it, that is a powerful thing to do in comparison to maybe the 1950s, early 2000s, that recent, where it was billboard, radio, television, magazine, but now that's on steroids now. We probably went from seeing 500 ads today 20 years ago to now it's that 10,000, that 4,000 to 10,000 mark when it comes to our phones, our tablets, and everything we see. Even at the gas stations now, can't even pump your gas without seeing, some of them will just have a commercial as soon as they pump your gas, because they want you to consume so you can eventually make some type of a decision. So we have to use that to our benefit. Don't just consume it. Figure out how you can leverage the internet, like we are in this case with education, or like my clients with storyline marketing, where they're leveraging it to have the attention of people in the area so they can bring service to those that might need the emergency services that they may offer.
Yeah. Well, and that goes to like the AI thing. That's the first thing that came to my mind is like a lot of these jobs that we have right now are being replaced with AI. So now there's never been a more important time for you to understand how you can navigate what the new world looks like.
Yeah.
Because AI took off real fast. I remember it was 2 or 3 years ago when they were talking about it, and there was mass fear behind it, where it was just like, AI is going to take over the world and robots are going to take your job and like all this other stuff. Now all of a sudden you get mass adoption from Google's using it, Facebook's using it. I mean, everybody's using AI, and it's become a mainstay right now. And it's going to keep evolving. But then what happens with companies? Companies realize if we invest into AI, we don't have to have employees anymore. Mm-hmm. So now what does that mean for your livelihood? What does that mean for your family? What does that mean for your retirement? What does that mean? Like, now the income that you've been dependent on your entire life is gone.
Yep.
So now what?
You got to develop
so
a skill.
you have to have a skill. You have to figure out how to use the resources that you have at your disposal to create something for yourself. And this is that independence that we're talking about here. Is we're at a critical time in our evolution as people where you have to adjust to what's happening. Because if you're not seeing the writing on the wall with everything going on, you're going to get left behind. Yeah. And I saw this in finance in 19, when I was working for banking, they were talking about, and this is what got me interested in like putting news content out and stuff like that, but they started talking about the switch over from the old banking system to the digital style of banking and crypto and all this stuff. Yeah. Yet at the same time, behind the scenes, they were, there's all this fear behind crypto and there's all this fear behind Bitcoin and all this other stuff, yet banks are talking about how we're going to switch the software to using it. And it's like, so wait a second, you're telling people to be afraid of this while there's mass investment going on over here. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing, like, the more I dig into finance, the more I realize that's exactly how this is working, is they're pushing fear. They're telling you, fear AI, fear all this. Meanwhile, NVIDIA, if you were part of the community, I was telling people, buy NVIDIA when it was $150 a share. A year later, it was at $1,200 a share. Mm-hmm. You're 10xing your money. Because what we realize is like, if they're telling you something, do the opposite. Because they're trying to control you. And that's the power of marketing right now. And the powers that be know that. Our governments know that. Our politicians know that. We're coming in an election cycle right now. What do you think they're campaigning on? Fear. Yeah. That's what they're going to keep doing, right? So it's like, this is the new style of marketing, and they know it.
Yeah, 100%. And then, if you us living in Arizona, just seeing all of the Waymo cars, and I'm sure they're all over, but just seeing more and more of them, and this, because for me, I Ubered, so that's like a lot prevalent in my eyes, and it's something that's slowly creeping in as we see more of it, but that's threatening people's jobs in terms of taxis. Like, damn, they're really looking to make people obsolete in terms of the driving situation, and seeing that just the urgency. My urgency every day is just going up, because like, that's something that you could kind of rely on, but now that automation with the form of AI and automation, and then no people, it just makes you think like, damn, what can I do? What can I do? What can my family do to be on the offensive instead of the defensive? So where do you get your silver from?
Oh, so there's actually a company I use called SD Bullion, so I get it online. Okay. So I mean, you can go to like, no, I'm not sponsored. I'll just be totally transparent with you. There's other ones out there that are equally as good. That's just the one that I've had a lot of success with. Mm-hmm. You can go to local places too. Like, I've been looking at Scottsdale, like places around in Scottsdale, because you're actually going to get a little bit better of a rate getting it in person than you do online, plus shipping and all that other stuff. But yeah, I think I was telling people in the community, if you're not a part of the community, I'm telling you, you guys are missing out. Because I've been talking about gold and silver in my community for a year and a half, how it's a great hedge against a recession. Because when a recession happens, people need to have confidence in what they're investing into. Right. And one thing that's been a mainstay throughout our entire evolution as a human species has been gold and silver. So in times of economic crisis and recessions and uncertainty, people tend to buy gold and silver. So you're going to see the price of it jump up. Now, is it a great investment long term? Not really, but is it a good hedge against loss? Absolutely it is. Yeah. 100%. So I've been telling people in the community, buy it. Even if you're buying, like, I mean, you could buy it as small as like a gram of it. Mm-hmm. And a gram of it is like $30. Mm-hmm. So even if you're buying like $30 of it a week, that's better than not buying it. At all. Because that's something that, number one, it's tangible, right? So if something were to happen, total apocalyptic event, you could easily trade that for whatever, right? But let's say that America just comes out of this and more powerful than ever, and we're around for another 100 years. Gold isn't going to just lose its value overnight and be like, okay, this is just done. Mm-hmm. Like, you can pass it down from generation to generation, and over time, gold has gone up by about 2 or 3%. So no, that's where I get it from. And whether you're buying gold or silver, both of them are good investments right now.
100%. And in the meantime, while, obviously we're talking about that element, and all I can think about is what can people do in the meantime with the power of social media, with something that they can leverage it to make money. And I run an advertising agency, Storyline Marketing, and so I work with a lot of local businesses where they have physical services. And so if you own a business, let's say you don't own a business, let's start with that first. Owning a business here in the United States, a service-based business, you have the ability to start a service-based business pretty quick. You can do that pretty quick here in the United States. And on my algorithm, I see stuff where people buy like power washers, and they power wash pavement, or they power wash side of homes. Those machines cost anywhere from like a couple thousand to maybe $4,000 to $5,000, and they just go door to door to say, hey, I'll power wash your home for X amount of money. But if you film that act being done every time you do a job, let's just say you have no money, save up to make $2,000 to $5,000 to buy a machine. I'm gonna get the exact number. If somebody could get it and find it, put it in the comments, that'd be great. But $2,000 to $5,000 to get a power washer, and then you start to advertise. Say the first jobs you do for the first 5 are free. And then you can make an advertisement with you doing that job, where you might have a compilation, or you might have a time lapse of you power washing, or a camera or GoPro on the power washing stick, and then showing before and afters. Yeah, you could start making anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a day, just cleaning people's side of their homes, as well as maybe their concrete or their driveways with this power washing machine, where the initial investment is $2,000 to $5,000, and then it starts with you. And then if you could film the act of it being done every single time and posting it, one step, and then the next step is running ads. And every time I running ads, if you were able to spend $10 to $20 a day on like Facebook or Instagram, maybe even TikTok, you could go ahead and start to collect a great amount of clients, where you could stack up your whole week, or you could stack up your whole month of power washing clients, where you start at $100 for a driveway, maybe $200 for someone's front yard in their backyard or their patio. And then you can start making money in that practical sense. And that's just one example of how you can take control. You can be on the offensive, where you can use marketing and the social media to your advantage, and you can learn an actual skill that would be existent and be of value outside of the internet, where it wouldn't necessarily be reliant on the internet. Because once you start doing it, to say everything goes out, there's people still going to be looking for that value, in the sense I want to clean my driveway, I want to have my lawn cut. And that's like a tangible skill. And then in that process, you're going to learn sales, you're going to learn communications, which is a skill that is very much needed, especially those that consume social media all day. Where they know how to talk to people, but they also know how to provide this tangible service. But that's something that comes to mind as we talk about both polarities of like, okay, world ending, okay, social media, how can we take advantage of both?
Yeah, for sure. And I want to answer this question real quick. So where do I keep my gold and silver? I have a safe. In my house that I keep it in. Okay. So, and to piggyback off what you're saying right now, so there's this guy, and this is where my brain went. So the China video I made, and this is just me making content, right? Like I've developed this skill over time, and I'm not saying you need to do this, but like this is the power of what you can create, right? That China video, I got $2,400 in views on that video, right? So that's an example of what you can do just by filming what you're already doing. So like the example I'll give you is there was this guy, I found myself binging YouTube last month, and this guy, literally what he did is he's a cook at McDonald's, and he straps a GoPro to his chest, and he'll just film an hour-long session of him doing like, oh, this is how, like they have the McRibs, and here's the dinner rush for McRibs, or here's the breakfast rush, or whatever, and it's getting like 2 million views, and it's like he's piggybacking on what he's doing already. So think about that. You're getting double income. You're already getting paid from McDonald's. Now you're getting paid for basically strapping a GoPro to your chest and filming yourself doing it. Like, you'd be surprised by the stuff that people actually want to see.
Yeah.
They want to be a part of. They want to see, oh, what's the process of that? What goes into that? Stuff like that. Like, but until you do it, you don't know. It sounds dumb in your head, but it sounds dumb because you've never done it.
Yeah.
Once you start doing it, it's like content, right? Like, when I started doing content, I was like, I'm terrible at this. This is a really bad idea. Fast forward, 5 years later, I'm getting $2,500 a video now. Like, that's insane to think about, right? But it's like, that's the power that you're creating when you create any type of skill. And it doesn't matter if you're recording yourself doing something like that, or like you said, mowing lawns or power washing, or I had an automotive detail company that I would do on the side.
I remember. I was a client.
Yeah. So I think when I first started that business, I got to get Michael on here. Really good friend of mine, taught me everything about that business. But when I started doing detailing, I was charging like $75 an hour.
He was like, bruh.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is really good money. Like, and I only did it on the side. I would do it for like 4 or 5 hours. So I was making an extra, $150 a day, whatever, on days that I wanted to work.
Yeah.
But I scaled that business by the time I was done. And mind you, I only had the business for like 3.5 years or something like that. And then I got rid of the business. But I went from $75 an hour to charging $250 an hour. And I was getting it all day.
Yep.
And it was simply because I learned the skill of detailing, convenience, and value. Like, when you build that in yourself, people are willing to pay for that. Because at that level, like, you're building something that people are like, okay, I built it to a spot where people saw it as art. They're like, he's just not just cleaning the car. He's not just doing the grocery getter. This is a dude that has all the equipment. He spent time on his craft. He is paying attention to detail. He's making this thing show car ready. I had I don't know if I even told you this, but I had clients like Lady Gaga, Matt LeBlanc, John Cena, Lupe Fiasco. These were some of my clients. And I built it up to that level in 3.5 years. But that's because I honed that skill.
With the detailing?
Yeah, detailing. And then it was to a point where, I don't even know if I told you this, but I had to decide if I wanted to.
Out here.
Yeah. Well, no, okay, so they weren't out here. So I got the contracts for an auction house. So me and Michael, my partner at the time, and you guys are going to chance to meet him will be on one of the podcasts in the future, but me and him got the contract for the auctions at the time. So the cars that were running through the auctions were celebrity cars. Yeah. So one of them was Lady Gaga's. I still got a picture of that. John Cena actually went through a lawsuit. Really cool story. He went through a lawsuit for one of the cars that we detailed in Monterey, California for him. Matt LeBlanc, super cool guy. And then Lupe Fiasco, that was another cool guy too. He was selling kick push. He was selling a Ferrari 412, which I'd never seen at the time. Because that's another asset that people don't think about. Cars. Collector cars are an asset, believe it or not.
Of course. Yeah, 100%.
So Lupe Fiasco is getting ready to sell this car, and he wants to make it showroom ready so that he can basically sell it for top dollar. So he had this car sitting in his garage for God knows how long. Sends it to me and Michael to detail. This wasn't through the auctions. This was just, hey, do you know somebody? And it ended up getting in our care. And we detailed this car so much so that when he came to pick it up, he's like, I'm not selling this thing anymore. And he ended up keeping the car. But that's that's a cool story to tell. But it's like what you're talking about is where it's, if you really are that serious about creating something for yourself, you can do it. Yeah. It's just a matter of finding out what it is that you want to do, having a passion behind it, and just really diving in and going, I'm going to learn this thing. But think about that. Now, that's a skill that I have that if something were to happen for my social media where all of a sudden my social media is taken away, like finance completely changes, now we're trading tulips instead of dollar bills or whatever, I have that skill that I can go back to detail or whatever it is, you know what I mean? So.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
And then those that have a business, if you're watching this replay live, those that have a business, even if you don't, either or, think about the things that you are interested in watching. Like one of the things that growing up, that's not like a regular thing, but how it's made. There's a popular TV show where they would just show the process of how a light was made, a phone was made, a cabinet.
I remember that.
So that's what people like to watch. Even now, if you just scroll online, where people like there's a few people that do detailing that do a lot of before and afters. There's like young kids making great money, $2,000 to $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month, and they're doing before and afters and cleaning homes and also cleaning their cars. And they're getting viral views from just showing that before and after. People like to see the process, and so 100%. If you have a business, like when I was in when I was in Colorado, they do what $100,000, $150,000 on a monthly basis. Last month they did like 130, but they want to get more consistency. But all I did go into that automotive shop, the main thing is I was asking them questions on services that they offer on a regular basis. And so while I was there, I might have witnessed maybe 20, 30 customers inside of a 2-day period. But the priority was to get them interacting like they already do. And therefore, I'm going to be advertising that between today and tomorrow. I'm going to be editing, and then they're going to start to begin to advertise that. But just services and interactions that they are already having,
100%.
We're going to go ahead and magnify the current business that they've already built, and therefore attract more customers so people can put themselves in the idea of like, this is what this would be like if I were to get services done by this automotive shop. But it's more so the process. Like, okay, what's the value of a dyno tune-up? What's the value, like, how can I increase my horsepower utilizing this? Maybe I'm a beginner. Maybe I'm an expert. You know, what's a misconception that some people have that people need to know about, you know, being a professional tuner? Like, all these questions at every level, small or beginner, intermediate, and expert, that you can put out to the world to then advertise. But that's the stuff that people want to know. So think about what you consume on a regular basis versus the business that you might already own, that you could therefore start advertising and sharing, like, hey, this is how we do this is how we do A, B, and C, this is how we get result all the way to Z, and if you want this done, reach out to me or somebody that you might work with.
Yeah.
That advertising, that by itself, I got to add, just literally, when I went to Colleen, I literally just recorded myself telling the camera what was happening, essentially a case study and a review, and that ad is, in that last week alone, is brought me at least 16, 17 leads of just shops all across the United States. But I'm just telling them what I'm doing.
Right.
It's inception.
Well, you're telling a story, right? So I'm going to piggyback on that a little bit because I was looking at some numbers, and I think this goes perfectly into what you're talking about for marketing. So I was looking at some numbers. Did you see Joe Rogan's podcast about him calling?
Someone asked if they should pull out.
You should never pull your money out of stocks when you're in a losing position. So if you're going to invest right now, I'm not sure if it's Alicia or Alicia. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong.
Alicia.
If you are wanting to invest in the stock market right now, I would recommend dollar cost averaging, which DM me and we'll talk about dollar cost averaging, or having some money. You should have money on the sidelines right now in like some sort of high yield savings account, some money market account, something that's generating you passive income until the market bottoms out, because we probably still have more to go in the stock market. So if you're absolutely like, I need to invest in the stock market, dollar cost average, but have a bag ready to deploy when the time comes. But I would not recommend selling your stock in a losing position.
Yeah. And before you go into that, thank you for asking that question.
Yes.
Again, if you guys have questions, put them in there.
Yes.
Marketing and finance, we would like to go ahead and make a conversation about that, because that's where they come from.
An awesome question. But let's talk a little bit about the Olympics while we're at it. Right? So the Olympics, did you see Joe Rogan talk about the Olympics being a scam?
I think I saw the clip that you made. I saw the intro where, if I'm going to paraphrase, but he was talking about how they make $12 billion. And how much compared to what the athletes make?
But that goes perfectly. So I'll just let you guys know what the numbers are. I did the research numbers on it. So the Olympics are on pace to make about $12 billion from this round of games, right?
Yep.
Now, the athletes don't make any money from the actual Olympics itself, because the Olympics is a not-for-profit, but they do get paid from the countries. So the United States is only paying their athletes, if they get a gold, $37,500. Now think about that. You've been training your entire life.
Yeah.
You're representing your country at the highest possible level. These are people that eat, breathe, sleep, all of it, their craft. Like you're fine-tuning that your entire life.
I know a few people over there right now.
Yeah.
As we speak, literally right now.
Yeah, and the most you can make if you win a gold is $37,500. If you get bronze, it's $15,000. So when you start to think about how much these athletes are making, they're definitely getting scammed in this entire thing. So the question becomes, like, if you're an athlete, what can you do to start marketing yourself better? Like how, because that's what it's about, right? Like Simone Biles just became the best decorated gymnastics athlete the United States has ever seen, right? Knowing what we know now about if she's getting gold, now she's won multiple golds, so she's going to take home 6 figures, right? Which is awesome, but maybe if you're not to her level, how are you supposed to make up that income that you've been training now your whole life for, right? And this is where marketing comes in. It's like perfect opportunity right now on social media for athletes like them to go onto the Facebooks, to go onto the Instagrams, to go onto YouTubes, the TikToks, all that, and document the journey. Because I'm telling you right now, I'd be fascinated to see the training that these people go through. To know that you're doing it your whole life, to look at the details of it. Like, my hand curvature just isn't quite hitting the water right. So, and we're seeing it with what the NFL's doing right now with the receiver show. Have you seen that?
Yeah. 100%.
They're basically just doing the documentaries about receivers and what they go through. Like, stuff like this. Like, this is the stuff that you don't think about. You're just watching the games on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. And they do that on purpose. I'm glad you brought that up, because going back to the athlete side of things, and yeah, that's another question. I actually answer that before I go into
Okay,
that.
yeah. So let me answer this question real quick. And by high yield savings, what recommendations do you have? Because I have Amex one, but I don't know much about it. So high yield savings accounts, a lot of the best ones are offered online. So the best ones I've seen, you could just do a quick Google search on this, are offering between 5 and like 5.2%. That's a great rate, especially when you think about the rate of inflation. Inflation's like 3.1%, which means your dollar is losing value at a rate of 3.1%.
Yeah.
So you always want your money to be working for you. So if you can put it into a high yield savings account that's earning 5%, that means your money is technically gaining at 1.9%. So you can look online. They have plenty of high yield savings accounts out there. Some of them don't do it for money because, and that's fine. So I'm glad you mentioned that too. It's not always necessarily about the money. So that's awesome that you said that. What we're simply suggesting is if you're somebody who is trying to figure out a way to earn more income, maybe you're in business, maybe you're in sales, maybe you're somebody who wants to do content creation, maybe you're somebody who is like, I need to have another form of income coming in. That's what we're talking about in this. So.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is you don't have to be ultra, they're not necessarily doing it for the money, but it's important to be aware of multiple things that you can leverage, because going back to the point where inflation's really kicking a lot of people's butt, it's the fact that we're not in 1900s anymore. We're not in early 2000s anymore, where a dollar stretches. Like the new dollar nowadays, the new $20 bill is a $100 bill. Like that's the value of what a $100 bill has. So we can't just rely on one source of income, not because it's cool to have a side gig, or a part-time job, or just a part-time job. You only can max out how much money you can make from a job. Now you need to maximize what you do in your free time, something you might do in your free time, or how you like to, my sister used to make, what is it called? What is it? Not Jello. She would make slime. She was one of the people that made slime. Or she would have my mom buy a bunch of detergent and all the things that were needed with it. But there's a lot of people that just got paid, kids that got paid to just make slime, probably still to get paid to make slime, where they're just making what comes to mind. And that was just something that they just discovered, like when we were all kids. Like when I was a kid, one thing I still want to do that I haven't seen is I want to just get a house and I'm going to get a bunch of Lincoln logs, because I love making Lincoln logs.
Are awesome.
And I used to make pounds, and I want to just record it. Like, I just made this civilization, that was in my mind, just kind of just went
that would be sick.
in the words makes just what was in my head, because that's what I did when I was younger. So the things that you discover as a hobby, if you don't have one, doesn't mean you can't discover one, but that's the thing that you have the ability to leverage to where you can make an extra $2,500 a month,
right,
or more, where maybe it could replace your income. But the fact is, whatever you're doing singularly right now, likely for 85, maybe 50% of people, more than 50% of people, one job isn't going to cut it. One source of income isn't going to cut it, because inflation is really making that impossible, and it's out of necessity, not an accessory. So, but going back to the point of a receiver, going back to this whole thing, documenting the process. They did that. They made a priority. So Peyton Manning is the one that produces the show. It makes it that much more awesome. He's the one that produced quarterback and receiver. Yeah, because he's gone so heavy into the craft of the NFL. Like if you go on, he's got Omaha something. Omaha is his YouTube channel something, but he is interviewing like Bill Belichick, but he's getting a perspective from a player to the players that might be active, and so that's why the detail's so good, because he is the producer of that show, but he is sharing the details that make you want to watch the sport and show that much more. Now you have a devotion to that player. Now you might want to buy a jersey that much more. Now you want to go ahead and join a fantasy league that much more, because you are invested into that person's details of who they are, their work ethic, their favorite color, why they do what they do. Oh, that person works really hard. Like I'm around St. Brown. I'm like, that's even more of my boy.
The sun guy?
My sun guy. I'm like, yo, I rock with it even more because, his dad was Mr. Universe. These are the details.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was two-time Mr. Universe, and his dad produced 3 Division I athletes, and then he got 2 sons in the NFL. Amon-Ra St. Brown and
Equanimous.
Yeah. So, but those I know this because I'm a Lions fan, but going to the point, these are the things that you have interest in, or these are the things that essentially create money some format, whether you indirectly or directly know it. But if you can start to document the process of your job, of your hobby, and therefore start to let people know that you can do it for them, therefore you can start to make an income from just something that you might do on a regular basis, and you have a chance of thriving, or rather than just barely getting by or surviving. And that is the reason why we talk about this thing so passionately, Market Moguls, marketing and finance, because those two things are forever linked, especially 100%. With we got this phone going, we're looking at your comments, and then we got a camera going, and we got Facebook Live going, and this is important to us because we want to capture the process. We want to help as many people as possible, but we also want to get better at putting a message out to those that might be watching on every platform as possible. Right. Because if we want to do it, we're not waiting for somebody to do it. We're taking initiative to be the news as opposed to waiting for the news. But if you can do that for yourself, you can be the news and be the income, the extra income, by just documenting your process, like how it's made, like receiver, like quarterback. That's why you have a perspective of Patrick Mahomes or his wife, or like Travis Kelce, all these things, because you know the details. That's what people want to know, whether you realize it or not. But flip that coin from consumer to producer and watch things change, and watch you be able to make an extra income where you can actually have your head above water, because you can't. There's no surviving without it. There's no surviving.
Not anymore.
No,
I mean, with going back to the AI thing, I mean, they were even talking about AI financial advisors now, and so they started experimenting. Some of the top wealth companies, the Vanguard and I think Fidelity are using them right now. They're using AI trading robots instead of actual people to do trading for retirement accounts. AI is winning trades 30% more than the human is. That means that if you're somebody who's really good at trading stock, you have the series licenses, you've been doing it for decades, you're still getting beat up by AI, which means your job is now at risk because you're not doing what's in the best interest of your client, or you're trying to do it to the best of your ability, but you just can't perform at the level that AI is able to. So it's like even that sector isn't safe, right? So it's kind of like, and I was thinking about it as you were talking about documenting the journey, and going back to like the Lincoln Logs thing, I was thinking about like trains, like the old school trains. I remember going in, there's this place when I was in Chicago that they would sell actual like model train pieces and stuff like that. And it got me thinking, like, if you're somebody who's on here watching this podcast, or you're watching the live and you're like, well, my hobby's dumb. Like, whatever it is that you like to do, you're like, nobody would be interested in this. Think about it from a numbers standpoint. I'm a numbers guy, right? So there's, 7 billion people on the planet, something like that? If you just capture 1% of the entire population, 1% is 7 million people. I mean, 7 million people watching your content on a consistent basis, that is your livelihood right there. Yeah. That's the power. Yeah. And that's what we're looking at. I don't know, have you heard of Web3 at all? Okay. So that's what Web3 is actually doing now, right? So if you can create that following, anything that you put online, whether it be video format or it's blogs or it's posts or it's value content, whatever, you're getting paid for that now because you're the one that's generating traffic to that website. So that website's going to pay you. This is the change that we're seeing in technology right now. And you guys may have heard of Web3 or you haven't heard of Web3, but Web3 gives the power back to the creator.
You said no sound?
No sound? Did we lose sound?
That's what someone said.
Oh, but we're on TikTok though. So is that on TikTok that you can't hear us right now? Because we should still have. I know that we're good on here.
I know. No, I don't.
Oh no, we have sound.
Turn on your volume, G.
Yeah.
Come on, Don.
We definitely
turn
still
up your
have.
volume. Turn up your volume, because I just verified we can hear each other.
But yeah, it's like to get back to what we were talking about. It's like, man, that just threw me off my game a little bit.
I know. Hold on. Turn your volume on.
That the sound is working, should be working. Kenya's coming to visit right now.
Right.
But yeah, man, it's like you have to create that skill. I mean, that's just the level that we're at right now.
No, you got to create a skill, and that's why this is important. But we all have the capability of doing everything. You were talking about niches of you don't need everybody, even smaller than that, because 7 million might be overwhelming. But let's just say 50,000 people. If you can get 50,000 people to tune into your content in a span, let's just say over 6 months of people watching your content. Let's say you like to do underwater basket weaving. I like to call
underwater basket weaving.
Yeah,
You're the second person I've heard say that. That shit's so
that's
funny.
That's like a cliche thing
it's
people
so
say.
Funny.
But no, I see social media. All social media is like high school all over again. It's high school, but now it's high school, but for every grade level, because there's a niche and there's a pocket of the internet for everybody. And if it's not there yet, it can be created. Like, there's nobody I've seen make a devotion to Lincoln Logs. Maybe they do it after this, or it happens when I do it.
To see that now.
That's what I'm saying. So there's a niche of people that have had an idea, and they either are looking for that group or they aren't. Like when I was doing Miss Manual, like that was a very niche group of people when I was making that page, and therefore it gained unfathomable amounts of traction. And I'd rather have, when I grew that page, about 25,000 people. I'll take those 25,000 people and a peak of that over somebody that has 100,000 anytime. Most people's 100,000, or especially let's say somebody's got a fake 100,000 followers.
Yeah.
Like your 100,000 followers are way more valuable than somebody that has 100,000 real and then 400,000 fake. And that right there, because I have that army is hyper interested or hyper intrigued, or even smaller. 10,000. I'll take 10,000 highly invested people into my niche of Lincoln Logs than somebody's 50,000 and they kind of like it. I take that every day because I got 10,000 people that rock with what I rock with, and therefore it makes it easier. Like Alex Hormozy talks about, he sold people. He knows people making millions of dollars on like a 500 person, 1,000 person email list. He's like, they email him maybe like twice a
How
week.
big of a list?
Like 1,000, 500.
And they're making how much?
Millions.
Oh,
Multi-millions.
I
You could probably
got work
find the
to do,
clip.
bro. I got work to do.
That's what I'm saying.
I got work to do.
You're already doing it, and that's the thing. You're hyper niching on providing value to people, and so and I forgot exactly what the profession was, but you don't need everybody. Going back to the point, you just need to get a small army of people that are ultra interested, if not obsessed, with the things that you're talking about. So that's why you got to give yourself the chance. It doesn't have to be 1 million, even 7 million. You just need 1,000. Hell, you need 100 people that are about it. You could take over the world.
Yeah. I mean, man, that's where it's at. But I think this is a good stopping point.
Yeah.
We went in today. I remember Sean texted me and he said we need to get in the studio. We had a lot to talk about. I'm glad that we got to talk about all that stuff. But
yeah, it was great.
Yeah, no. Awesome session today. Guys, feel free to ask any questions you have as we wrap this thing up.
Yeah, and then the replay. So these are all live, but the replay will be on YouTube. Where?
At the Real Rick Doyle.
So it'll be at the Real Rick Doyle as far as the playback. So
link in bio.
Yeah, link in bio, and feel free to leave comments and things that you might be curious to chat about next time we jump on. Because again, you want to exercise solutions around the problems that will never necessarily go away. There's always going to be new problems to solve. So if you can kind of wrap your head around that identity, then you'll be good to go, and that's what we want to do with this. So we're gonna keep it going, and demand more in 2024. So.
Market Moguls, baby.
And he's gonna have a Caitlin Clark jersey soon.
Caitlin Clark jersey coming soon.
Right.